So for this video, I check out the best open worlds to experience on the Xbox Series X and S if you're after sprawling and expansive game world. But it's not always just about the size, it can be their density in smaller spaces, or they can have a large amount of gameplay freedom within their world. And whilst the size of the worlds may differ, so does the way you get around them, which can make the games quite different to each other. Now these games don't need to be Xbox Series X enhanced or only available on Next Gen, as the list will include cross-gen games and those which are played via backwards compatibility, and I'll lay out any benefits you receive if you're playing on that hardware. But just looking at this list, there is so much damn quality on here that each and every one of these is worth playing. But if you like the video, then please hit the thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, share it around on different platforms as it helps a lot, so thank you. Also, in the description is a link to my Discord server if you want to join. And with that out of the way, let's get to the list. Starting at number 10, we have Mafia Definitive Edition, and this is one game which differs from others on the list, as even though the game world is quite large, set mostly in its own fictional city, the game world of Mafia is really only there to push forward the excellent narrative and a place for the characters to exist in. This isn't the type of game where there is a ton of things to do outside of the main campaign, no map filled with markers, but this open world gets on here because of its authenticity in showing players the time period of the 1930s. From the way the characters talk to the cars that drive around, the fashion, the music, and the types of stores you see as you move around by either driving or on foot. Mafia Definitive Edition presents this detailed and downright gorgeous and visually stunning world. If you've never played a Mafia game and are after something more story driven, then definitely check this out, as it's fantastic. For number 9, we have The Division 2, and even though the first game had that great snowy and cold setting of New York, the second game's Washington DC is still very good, plus it also runs at 4K 60 on the Xbox Series X, which just makes the game much better to play. The level of detail in this open world can really be impressive sometimes, with areas which are more popular or built up having trash piling up or other items which have been damaged or broken as the years of the infection took hold. Or you see what were once parks be all overgrown and seeing the vegetation slowly take over on the outsides of buildings or making their way indoors. Ubisoft are no stranger to making really detailed open world games, and The Division 2 is no different. The missions and side quests will take you all over areas of the map as you slowly level up and acquire weapons and gear to take on the more difficult enemies. The game also has a great cover system and shooting mechanics, so if you're into open world games and like shooters, then definitely give this one a go. I've always been a fan of the Division games. Up at number 8, we head to Hong Kong in Sleeping Dogs, and this game really deserved to be a series, but it wasn't meant to be. Starting life out on the Xbox 360, it was already a great and authentic open world, but with the remaster on the Xbox One, it only improved with its better performance and visual tweaks. Plus, Sleeping Dogs has always been one of those games that's either been forgotten about or people passed on it over the years, and then you have those that play it and love it. Sleeping Dogs must be one of the few games I've seen where I only read and hear positive things about it, which is rare in gaming. For a game of its time, the small details you see around the streets or at the market stalls, the way people stand around and go about their day, the details on the sides of many of the apartment buildings with clothes hanging on the balconies. It's a densely packed city with lots of alleyways and shop signs that are all lit up. There are more impressive open worlds on the list, but Sleeping Dogs' open world is still very good today, and as a game, it's pure awesome. Great story, great world, great characters. Coming in at number 7, we have Immortals Fenyx Rising. Now this is the typical style of Ubisoft open world, which is packed with collectibles and things to discover. But it's made a little easier with the binoculars you can equip to find items and resources far off into the distance. It has a very Breath of the Wild vibe to its visual design, but the Immortals world is jam-packed with stuff to collect, and like many open world games that have come before, it's split up into several areas, each with their own aesthetic and graphical qualities that make them stand out from each other. Plus we have the large statues that are in each of the regions, which play into the Greek mythology of the story and all of the characters. And then at times, Immortals Fenyx Rising just looks jaw-droppingly beautiful, and it's a combination of its colourful and vibrant world and the gorgeous lighting which can bathe it all in an orange glow, or even how the clear, star-filled nights in the Aurora Borealis that lights up the darkened sky. Pair all of that with the performance mode at 60 frames on the Series X and S, and this is one of the best looking games out there. No matter where you go within the world, there is always something to see and discover, and a range of enemies to fight. It's a great game. For number 6, we have Yakuza Like a Dragon, but we can include the whole series here as they are all fantastic and excel in multiple areas, including its open world. The open worlds here are much smaller than probably anything else on this list, but what Yakuza lacks in terms of world size, it makes up for it in jam-packing the gaming space with excellent stories and characters, side quests and activities, are large populations that make the city feel alive at all times of day. Plus, players recognise parts of that city and how it can differ and change from game to game based upon what's happening in the stories and the time period in which it's set. Even though there are invisible walls which block players from going further on the outskirts of the city, it's a minor annoyance, but this amount of small alleyways, shops and buildings to explore is superb, and the city feels so good to be in because of all these things. One of my biggest frustrations with some open world games is that they lack people that inhabit the world, towns or cities, where there are so few that it doesn't make it believable. Yakuza is the opposite, and it's a testament to the developers that they cram so much into this one setting and continually fill it with fantastic stories and characters as well. Loading this up on the Series X, I could immediately tell the difference in terms of visual quality over last gen Yakuza games, with everything looking much cleaner, and it ran fantastically. It's just a great series. Next at number 5 is what I believe is one of the most beautiful games out there, and it's Forza Horizon 4. You'll probably see me crashing all over the place, as how can you not look at all this beauty on display at all times, from the vast draw distances, the gorgeous sunsets and sunrises, watching things smash as you drive through them, and then add in the different seasons which show everything off at different times of the year. Plus, there are all of the great looking cars. Forza Horizon 4 is a feast for the eyes, but I just have to include it in these lists and bring attention to just how impressive Playground Games' open world is, regardless of which system you play on. But if we're talking about the Series X in particular, then you get a 4K 60 experience with extra details such as higher quality textures further out and better shadows. Small details on the cars such as the grills can now be made out better due to the increase in resolution. But the main reason to play Forza Horizon 4 for car enthusiasts is for the amount of events and activities to play in and exploring its world, and the extras such as finding new cars. The game is pretty much the perfect racing game for me, and it will be exciting to see what Playground Games do with Forza Horizon 5 with more development time on the Series X. For number 4, we have No Man's Sky, and this of course goes way beyond what an open world is in this procedurally generated open universe, which goes from strength to strength. What the game may lack in terms of each planet being as detailed and packed as other games on this list, it makes up for in its freedom, diversity, and almost limitless number of planets that players can get to explore, both on land and in water, plus all of the space, freighters, and space stations as well. Each planet or even moon are huge, and all are open for players to simply explore, mine for resources, and set themselves a task of creating a huge base for themselves and their friends. And all of this is even better on the Xbox Series X, with larger bases being able to be constructed, plus the additions of better visual details and much smoother frame rates. The universe is here to be explored with other players if you wish to, and No Man's Sky has that quality where some players will just want to keep going and discovering what the next planet holds and what it can offer them, or simply how the planet's surface and animals will differ from anything they've seen before. And the game just becomes larger and more intricate with each update. There's not much else out there like this game. Up at number 3, we have Mad Max, and this is a pretty underrated game in my view, with many gamers seeming to pass on playing it or just straight up forgetting that it exists. And this is slightly different to the other open world games in that this doesn't have a huge amount of things to do or see whilst driving around the barren landscape. And whereas I'm often critical of empty or near empty open worlds, it actually works really well in this game as it fits in with the source material and does it justice, which is so important when dealing with a licensed game. The game starts out with a bang, and when traversing around the world, making sure you have enough petrol in the car, it has the great blend of action, but also having this real sense of isolation, which is what you want in a Mad Max game when driving and running around this post-apocalyptic wasteland. The vehicles you drive around all sound really beefy, like they've been slapped together with a bunch of spare parts, which they really have. And as you drive around with nothing but sand stretching off into the distance, Mad Max really just has a great open world. Not much in the way of enhancements if playing on next gen hardware, apart from auto HDR and faster load times, but backwards compatibility lets these games live on. Coming in at number 2 we have Dying Light, the zombie infested nightmarish world, but what makes this an open world that I really enjoyed playing in was the attention to detail all around the place, plus the means of traversal by way of the excellent parkour system which the dev team implemented into the game. Standing up high on the building's rooftops and looking out at the mess below, seeing plumes of smoke off in the distance from the fires and chaos which must be raging down below, to how the trees slowly sway in the breeze as you watch debris constantly blowing around the place. The streets are littered with the infected, and you're never safe for too long in the open world if you're on street level, so it's always best to stick to those rooftops where you'll be running and jumping between the buildings, and it has a great sense of speed and impact when you're either climbing up or if you mistime your jump or the distance and hit the ground. The variety between the large buildings and smaller, almost shanty looking parts, plus the safe zones all blend together to deliver an open world which is quite unique when compared to others. And up at number 1 is Rockstar's brilliantly realised Red Dead Redemption 2, and simply spending enough time in this game can show you where so many others fall down and how they really just end up feeling, well, like a video game. But Red Dead Redemption 2 feels like a living, breathing world where it continues to function without you being around. And I'll just quickly mention that Arthur Morgan is one of the best characters and best voice characters in any game in my opinion. But when moving around this vast world, complete with fog-laden swamps and green, open pastures and lakes with wildlife going about their day, or the large cities or small settlements we visit with their stores, the horse and carts moving around the place, or how the dusty dirt roads sometimes turn to mud. Even just standing around either outside or at a saloon watching the locals do what they do, seeing how the AI interacts and what they'll do next is quite impressive. Unfortunately, this is yet another game without much in the way of improvements, apart from the much faster initial loading when you start up the game. But if Rockstar ever do decide to release a Series X patch for this, then the internet will melt down, as this at 60 frames a second would be fantastic. The extra power of the Series X just improves the frame rate in some areas over even the Xbox One X, which is good, but a proper patch would be incredible. So there's more great open world games to play on the Xbox Series X and S, and even though there aren't a whole lot of open world games that take advantage of all of the new hardware, the fact that we can play these older backwards compatible games with the new consoles begins a new era for console gamers, getting to take our games forward with us and not constantly waiting out the dry spells of new console launches. All of these are worth playing for the first time or revisiting. They're fantastic games, but if you could, please give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment and subscribe, plus share the video around please. All of these things help tremendously in getting the video and the channel noticed. There is also a link down below for my Discord server, as I mentioned before, if you want to join. But with that, thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next video.